Emma Hale had never been the kind of woman people noticed when she walked into a room. She was the quiet type, the one who held her hands close to her body as if she were trying to take up less space in the world. Her soft brown hair was usually tied back in a simple braid, and her clothes were practical and plain. She rarely spoke unless someone asked her a direct question. Even then, she answered with short sentences and a small, polite smile. But for the first time in a long while, she was in a place where quiet wasn't a weakness. The women's shelter she had moved into 2 months ago was humble but warm. The building was old, with wooden floors that creaked and windows that sometimes let in a draft. Yet it gave Emma a kind of safety she hadn't felt in years. No one shouted here. No one demanded anything. People talked in gentle voices and asked how she was doing as if they truly cared. The shelter accepted women who had gone through difficult times. Some had lost their homes. Others had lost jobs or were trying to rebuild their lives. Emma fit in easily because she never judged anyone. She listened. She helped. She cleaned dishes in the kitchen, folded laundry, and sometimes read bedtime stories to the children who stayed there with their mothers. Even though she kept to herself, the staff loved her. She worked without being asked and always tried to make things easier for everyone else. She often arrived in the dining room before sunrise, wiping down tables and preparing the breakfast trays. The other women said she didn't need to work like that because the shelter didn't require chores, but Emma insisted. She said it kept her mind calm, and when she had something to focus on, something peaceful like washing plates or sweeping the floor, she felt a little more grounded, a little more steady. Despite her kindness, Emma carried a shadow inside her. A quiet fear lived in her heart. One she hid behind those small smiles. She had left behind a life that had drained her confidence little by little. She didn't talk about that life. Not even when someone asked. She always replied, "It's better now," and changed the subject. The staff respected her privacy and never pushed. They liked her just as she was a gentle soul trying to rebuild herself. The shelter recently joined a program meant to help women who wanted a fresh start in rural areas. The idea was simple. Some men in remote communities were looking for companionship, and some women were looking for stability and a new place to belong. Everything was voluntary, carefully guided by counselors and legal advisors. The shelter made sure no one felt pressured. Emma had heard the other women whisper about the program for weeks. Some joked about finding a farmer or a rancher who wanted a partner to help with chores. Others laughed nervously, unsure if such a life was right for them. Emma never joined those conversations. She knew life on a farm or ranch required strength and confidence, two things she believed she didn't have. So when the staff told the women they were welcome to fill out an application if they wished, Emma simply stepped aside and let others take the papers. She didn't even think about joining. She had just begun to feel stable at the shelter. She wasn't ready to imagine a future beyond it. But life, as it often does, moved in its own way. One of the women, a cheerful and outgoing girl named Leela, had filled out an application for herself. Bright handwriting, colorful doodles in the margins, and a smiling photo clipped to the top. That same week, Emma had filled out a simple form for a different program, one that offered job training at local shops. She planned to learn how to manage a front desk or help at a bakery. Small goals, safe goals. No one expected the mix-up. Somehow, somewhere between the pile of papers being sorted on the worn wooden office desk and the computer entries being typed in by volunteers, Emma's form got switched with Lila's. The job training form ended up under Lila's name, and the match program form, Lila's form, ended up under Emma's name. When the staff realized a rancher from another town had seen Emma's profile and wanted to meet her, they were surprised. Emma didn't even know her name had been submitted, but the rancher seemed genuine and kind, at least based on his letters. The staff decided to speak to Emma before canceling anything. Emma was in the laundry room when they came to find her. She was folding towels into neat stacks when one of the counselors gently tapped her shoulder. "Emma, can we talk for a moment?" She looked up with wide eyes, worried she had done something wrong. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, everything is fine," the counselor assured her. "It's just, well, someone is coming to meet you today." Emma froze. "To meet me?" They explained the mix-up as clearly as they could. but Emma still blinked in confusion. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a towel to her chest. I didn't sign up for that. We know, the counselor said kindly. It was an error. If you don't want to meet him, we'll cancel right away. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. Emma shook her head quickly. No, please cancel. I'm not the person he expects. I don't match that description, not at all. But the man, Colt Dawson, a rancher from 3 hours away, was already on the road. The shelter called him, but the call didn't go through. There was no way to reach him until he arrived. Emma spent the next hour pacing the small sitting room, her palms sweaty, her heartbeat uneven. She didn't know what to do. She didn't want to meet a stranger. She didn't want someone thinking she had tricked them. She avoided mirrors whenever she could. She didn't think of herself as someone anyone would choose. When the sound of a truck pulling into the parking area reached her ears, she felt her breath catch. She stood near the window, half hidden behind the curtain, and saw a dust-covered pickup truck roll to a stop. A tall man in a worn hat stepped out, brushing dirt from his jeans. He looked around with quiet curiosity, holding a small notebook. He seemed calm, patient, steady as if nothing could hurry him. Emma's first instinct was to hide. But the staff encouraged her to at least meet him long enough to explain the mistake. Just say hello, they said softly. You don't have to agree to anything. We'll be right here if you need us. Emma swallowed hard. Her hands were shaking so badly she clasped them together in front of her to keep them still. She walked toward the entrance slowly, every step feeling like it weighed a little more than the last. When she reached the doorway, the man had just stepped inside. He removed his hat out of respect and smiled gently at the staff member greeting him. Then his eyes fell on Emma. Emma lowered her gaze immediately. She felt her cheeks warm. She rushed to speak before anyone else could. I'm not the pretty one you ordered, she said in a trembling voice. There was a mix-up. I'm not who you think. Her words hung in the air, shaky and earnest. She expected him to look confused, or disappointed, or to turn away. Instead, the cowboy's smile softened, warm and surprising. He looked at her the way someone might look at a sunrise, calm, unhurried, quietly appreciative. You're all I need, he said gently. Emma's breath shook. She didn't know how to reply. She wasn't used to kindness that sounded so sure, so steady. She waited for him to realize the truth, that she wasn't confident, wasn't bold, wasn't anything like the woman whose form had been sent to him. But instead of turning away or insisting on the woman he had expected, Colt simply asked if he could talk with her for a little while, nothing more. No pressure, just a conversation. The staff guided them to a quiet corner of the common room. Emma sat stiffly, unsure where to put her hands, while Colt sat across from her with the easy posture of someone used to sitting by campfires and talking to the stars. He didn't talk about the program. He didn't ask her for anything. Instead, he asked simple questions: how she was feeling, what she liked to do during the day, if she enjoyed working with animals. Emma answered nervously at first, but as minutes passed, she felt her shoulders loosen. He listened to her with genuine interest. Not once did he seem impatient or disappointed. By the time the sun began to set behind the shelter's small garden, Emma realized she had spoken more in 1 hour than she had in weeks, and for the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not judged, not compared, just seen. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't even know if she wanted to try whatever this was. But as she looked at Colt's gentle smile, she felt a small spark of something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Colt Dawson had grown up with wide-open skies above his head and miles of quiet land stretching in every direction. He knew the sound of wind moving through grass better than he knew the noise of any town. People said ranch life was lonely, but Colt never felt lonely in the honest work of feeding animals, fixing fences, or watching the sunset turn the fields golden. Still, he could not deny that his house felt too silent at night. He had spent years taking care of everything and everyone around him. But he had no one to come home to. No one to talk to at the end of a long day. No one to laugh with over a cup of coffee in the morning. That was why he wrote to the shelter's program. He wasn't looking for perfection. He wasn't looking for a picture-perfect match or someone who came with polished confidence. He simply wanted someone real, someone kind, steady, maybe a little shy. Someone willing to build a peaceful life with him. When he filled out the application, he wrote honestly, "I want a partner. Someone who wants a future, with simple days and good work." When the shelter replied, he read the short description they sent him more than once. It described a woman who was cheerful, confident, and eager to start fresh. Colt didn't worry about the details. He believed people were more than the words written about them. He trusted his heart to guide him when they met. So that morning, he loaded a basket into the back of his truck, a basket filled with homemade biscuits, jars of jam, and small gifts from his ranch. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just wanted to bring something warm and welcoming. He wanted whoever he met to feel valued. The drive to the shelter took hours, but Colt enjoyed the soft hum of the road beneath his tires. He practiced what he might say when he arrived. He didn't want to sound nervous. Even though he was, he kept his thoughts simple. Be honest. Be gentle. Be yourself. When he pulled into the shelter's parking area, he noticed the building looked old but cared for. The flower beds were small yet neat. Chairs sat on the porch as if waiting for people to come sit and rest. The place felt like a safe spot in a busy world. He got out of the truck, brushed dust from his shirt, and took off his hat when he stepped inside. A staff member greeted him kindly and was just about to guide him toward the meeting area when he saw her, Emma. She stood near the doorway, her hands held tightly together, her head lowered. She looked like she was trying to shrink into the corner, afraid to be seen. But her presence still caught his attention, like a soft note of music in a quiet room. There was nothing loud or flashy about her, yet something about her felt genuine. Before the staff or Colt could say anything, Emma spoke first. Her voice trembled like she had been holding her breath, afraid of what would happen next. "I'm not the pretty one you ordered," she said quickly. "There was a mistake. I'm not who you think I am." Colt blinked, surprised not by her appearance but by the fear behind her words. Her eyes were full of apology, as if she believed she had done something wrong just by standing there. It made his chest tighten with a protective feeling he didn't fully understand yet. "You're all I need," he said, his voice low and steady. For a moment, silence stretched gently between them. Emma looked up just long enough to see his expression. She seemed confused by his kindness, unsure whether she could trust it. Colt gave her time, not rushing her, not stepping too close. He could see she was shaken, and he didn't want to add to her worry. The staff suggested they sit somewhere quiet to talk, and Emma nodded slowly. Colt walked beside her, but kept enough distance to make sure she didn't feel crowded. When they reached the sitting room, he took the chair across from her. Emma sat very carefully, almost as if she expected the chair to disappear from under her. She kept her hands in her lap and her eyes on the floor. Colt knew she needed calm, not questions. So he didn't ask anything serious at first. He talked about the weather, the long drive, and the small town he passed through where a bakery made the best cinnamon rolls. He mentioned the ranch lightly, how many horses he had, how the goats kept getting into the garden, and how he always woke up before dawn. His stories were simple, easy to listen to, nothing too heavy. To his quiet delight, Emma's shoulders slowly loosened. She looked up occasionally, just for a second or two, then looked away again. But even those small moments mattered. They were tiny windows into her true self, soft, thoughtful, gentle. He noticed the way she brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear every time she grew nervous. He noticed how she held her breath before answering a question, as if checking her words before she let them out. He noticed how she relaxed just a little when the staff walked by, as if the familiar presence gave her a sense of safety. After a while, he asked, "Do you like animals?" The question seemed simple enough, but something brightened behind her eyes. She nodded. "Yes. I always have." Her voice was small but clear. "What kind?" Colt asked naturally. "Horses," she said without thinking. Then she blushed. "And dogs. And goats. I like all of them, I guess." Colt smiled. "Good. My ranch has plenty. They'd like you." She blinked at him, surprised. Why would they like me? Animals see the truth in people, he replied. They don't care about your past or how shy you are. They care about your kindness. And I can tell you have plenty of that. Emma looked down again, but this time her smile was shy instead of worried. They talked for nearly an hour. Colt didn't push for anything. He didn't ask why she was at the shelter or what she had been through. He simply offered a calm space where she didn't have to pretend or defend herself. At some point, Colt reached into the basket he brought and placed a small jar of wildflower honey on the table. "This is for you," he said. "Made it myself." Emma stared at the jar like it was too precious for her to accept. She touched the lid gently with her fingertips, as if checking whether it was real. "Thank you," she whispered. He saw how carefully she held it, and it made him want to bring her 100 more small kindnesses just to see her look at them that way, like no one had ever handed her something just to make her smile. Eventually, the staff approached them to ask how things were going. Emma looked unsure. She glanced at Colt, then at the floor, then back at the staff. "He's kind," she said softly. The simple words carried a lot of meaning. Colt felt something warm settle in his chest at that. The counselor asked Emma if she wanted to take a short walk outside with Colt. The walk wasn't about deciding the future. It was simply a chance to talk in the fresh air. Emma hesitated, then nodded. She stood with her hands clasped tightly behind her back, nerves still flickering in her posture. Colt stepped ahead slightly so she wouldn't feel watched. They walked around the small garden behind the shelter. The garden had rows of flowers, some in bloom, some still small and green. Emma paused near a rose bush and gently touched a petal. "This place is the first safe place I've had in a long time," she said softly. Colt nodded. "I'm glad you found it." She looked at him, then away quickly. "I didn't want to waste your time. You came here expecting someone else. I came here hoping to meet someone honest," Colt said. "Looks don't make a partner. A kind heart does." Emma's breath hitched slightly, but she didn't step away. She walked beside him a little closer than before. When their walk ended, Colt told her he didn't expect an answer right away. He said he wanted her to take her time, think about what she wanted, and not feel any pressure. Emma thanked him with a soft smile that felt like a fragile but important step. As he drove away later that evening, Colt glanced at the shelter in his mirror. He didn't know what the next day would bring, but he knew something simple and true. Emma Hale had a strength she didn't see in herself. And if she allowed it, he would be honored to walk beside her as she found it again. And back inside the shelter, Emma held that small jar of honey close to her chest. She didn't understand why his words made her feel lighter, or why her heart felt warm instead of scared. But she knew one thing for certain: Colt Dawson didn't look at her the way others had. He didn't see her as a mistake, a burden, or someone unimportant. He had looked at her like she mattered, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to wonder what it might feel like to believe that. Emma didn't sleep much the night after Colt's visit. She lay awake on her narrow shelter bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft breathing of the women in the nearby rooms. Normally, the quiet comforted her, but that night her thoughts were too full. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered Colt's gentle smile and the warm steadiness in his voice when he told her she was enough. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time, maybe ever. The next morning, the shelter staff asked how she felt about Colt and whether she wanted to take the next step in the program. It wasn't a commitment or promise. It was simply a chance for her to visit his ranch, to see if life there would suit her. Emma felt nervous even thinking about it. The idea of leaving the shelter, even for a short trip, made her stomach flutter. But at the same time, she remembered the safe feeling she'd had when Colt talked to her. The peace in his eyes had felt like a warm blanket around her. After thinking quietly for a long moment, Emma whispered, I think I want to go. Just to see." The staff smiled and told her she could return any time she wished. The program required supervision and clear boundaries, so one of the counselors would drive her to the ranch and stay nearby for the first meeting. Knowing this made Emma feel a little braver. When the day came, Emma stood outside the shelter with a small bag of her belongings. She wasn't sure what clothes to bring, so she packed 2 simple outfits, a sweater, and the jar of honey Colt had given her. She kept her hands tightly clasped around the strap of her bag as she waited for him to arrive. Her heart felt like it was trying to beat out of her chest. Then she saw Colt's truck turning down the road. He stepped out of the truck with the same calm confidence she remembered. His hat shaded his eyes, but she could still see the warm smile spreading across his face. Emma felt her own lips lift into a shy smile without realizing it. Something about his presence made her shoulders relax. "Morning, Emma," he said softly, like he didn't want to startle her. "Morning," she replied, her voice quiet but steady. He opened the passenger door for her, making sure she didn't feel rushed. The counselor sat in the back seat, giving them space while still following the program rules. Emma took a deep breath and climbed into the truck. Colt didn't start driving right away. He waited for her to settle, waited for her hands to stop trembling, waited until she gave a tiny nod that she was ready. Only then did he start the engine. The drive to the ranch took over an hour, but it didn't feel long. Colt talked softly about the land they passed, the hills, the small lake that reflected the sky like a mirror, the horses that sometimes wandered too far and had to be rounded up. Emma listened quietly, occasionally asking a small question that made Colt glance over at her with an encouraging smile. She noticed how gentle his voice became whenever she spoke, as if he was carefully holding her words. When they finally reached the ranch, Emma pressed her hands to the window in quiet awe. The land stretched endlessly, with rolling fields, tall grass, and wooden fences that seemed to go on forever. A few horses grazed near the barn, their tails flicking lazily in the warm breeze. Everything was open and wide, and full of peace. Colt helped her out of the truck and let her take in the view without rushing her. "It's beautiful," Emma whispered. "Thank you," Colt replied. "It's home. And you're welcome here." She felt the honesty in his words. No pressure, no expectation, just an invitation to breathe and be herself. They started the visit with a quiet walk around the property. Emma felt small next to the wide land, but not in a frightening way. The sky was huge above them, and the air smelled like hay and sunshine. Colt pointed out the old oak tree where he liked to sit in the evenings, and the small garden he was trying to grow, though he admitted he wasn't very good at it. Emma laughed softly, the sound surprising even herself. When they reached the stable, a gentle-looking horse lifted its head and walked toward them. Its coat was a warm brown color, and its eyes were soft. "This is Daisy," Colt said, patting the horse's neck. "She's one of the calmest ones we have." Emma stepped back instinctively. She liked animals, but she hadn't been around horses in years. They seemed so big, so powerful. Colt noticed her hesitation and moved slowly. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You don't have to touch her if you're not ready." Emma took a breath and watched Daisy's steady eyes. After a moment, she stepped forward and extended her hand. Daisy sniffed her fingers before gently brushing her nose against Emma's palm. Emma let out a small breath of wonder. "She likes you," Colt said warmly. Emma smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. They spent the next hour meeting animals, walking the fields, and talking about simple things. Emma grew more relaxed with each passing minute. She found herself asking Colt about his daily routines, what he ate for breakfast, how often he had to repair fences. His answers were thoughtful and calm. He didn't try to impress her with big stories. He talked honestly about the hard work, the early mornings, and the quiet nights. At one point, they stopped at a spot where the grass opened into a small clearing. A breeze tugged lightly at Emma's hair. Colt looked at her with gentle seriousness. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Emma looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. I like it here," she admitted softly. "It feels peaceful." "I'm glad," Colt said. "You deserve peace." The words touched her deeply. She swallowed, emotion tightening her throat. Later, they sat on the porch steps while the counselor spoke with some ranch workers nearby. Colt handed Emma a glass of cool lemonade. She held it carefully, as if afraid to drop it. "You don't have to decide anything today," Colt told her. "Just take your time. I'm not in a hurry." Emma nodded. She appreciated that so much that he wasn't pushing her to promise anything, wasn't trying to convince her of something she wasn't ready for. He simply wanted her to feel safe. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the land, Emma found herself feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Comfortable. Not confident yet, not sure of herself, but comfortable. Colt didn't make her feel judged. He didn't ask about things she didn't want to talk about. He accepted her quietness, her hesitations, her small words. Before she left, Colt showed her a small guest room he had prepared inside his home. The room wasn't fancy. It had a simple bed, a soft rug, and a window overlooking the fields. But it was tidy, warm, and welcoming. Emma touched the blanket with gentle fingers. "I fixed it up in case you decided to stay for a trial period," Colt explained, stepping back so she didn't feel crowded. "Only if you want to. You can come for a week, or a month, or a day. Whatever feels right to you." Emma turned slowly, looking at him. She was used to people expecting things from her, demanding things, needing her to act or decide quickly. Colt was the opposite. His patience was like a quiet river, steady, peaceful, always giving her space. I might like to try," she whispered. Colt's smile grew, not wide or excited, but warm and grateful. "Then we'll take it one day at a time." When the counselor drove her back to the shelter that evening, Emma held the jar of honey in her lap again. But this time, her heart wasn't heavy with fear. It was filled with something new: hope, curiosity, and a small but growing belief that maybe she could build a new life. She thought of Daisy brushing her nose against her hand, of Colt's soft voice telling her she deserved peace, of the room prepared just for her. And for the first time in a very long while, Emma looked toward the future and didn't feel afraid. She felt ready to try. Emma returned to the ranch a week later for her trial stay. She stood at the shelter's doorway with her small duffel bag, looking both nervous and hopeful. Colt arrived right on time, just as calm and warm as ever. When she climbed into his truck, he didn't ask if she was sure or ready. He simply said, "It's good to see you." And the words settled in her heart like a soft blanket. As they drove, Emma quietly watched the land pass by, noticing how the fields grew wider the closer they came to the ranch. She still felt nervous. Her hands twisted the fabric of her sleeve over and over, but underneath the nerves was something new. A feeling that she had been given a chance to begin again without fear, without shame, without anyone expecting more from her than she could give. When they reached the ranch, Colt carried her bag inside but didn't open it or touch anything without asking. He placed it on the bed in the guest room and stepped back. "If you need anything at all, just tell me," he said gently. Emma nodded, grateful for his respect and patience. She had never known a place where she didn't feel like an inconvenience. She didn't know how to accept kindness without shrinking away. But she tried. Little by little, life on the ranch began slowly. Colt didn't give her chores right away. He let her follow him around, watching him work. She learned how he fed the animals early in the morning, how he checked the fences in the afternoon, how he made sure the horses had enough water and shade on warm days. Emma didn't speak much at first, but she listened closely to everything he said. And Colt, understanding her silent nature, didn't fill the air with unnecessary words. He talked when he needed to, and he let the silence rest gently between them. On the third day of her stay, Emma asked if she could help with something. Colt's smile lit up his face in that calm, warm way that always made her chest tighten just a little. "Of course," he said. "I'd like that." He gave her simple tasks: carrying small buckets of feed, brushing Daisy's coat, gathering eggs from the chicken coop. Emma did each task carefully, paying attention to every detail. Colt admired how seriously she took her work. She wasn't careless or distracted. She was focused, gentle, and surprisingly good with animals. The horses seemed to trust her quickly, especially Daisy, who followed her around like a quiet friend. Working alongside Colt built a slow, steady rhythm between them. They shared quiet moments that felt peaceful rather than uncomfortable. Sometimes Colt would glance over and find Emma watching the sky, her eyes full of a calm he hadn't seen when he first met her. He didn't interrupt those moments. Instead, He admired the way she was starting to breathe easier, step by step. One afternoon, after a long day of tending to the animals, they sat on the porch with iced tea. The sky was painted with soft oranges and pinks, and the air smelled like warm earth. Emma watched the horizon thoughtfully. "You work very hard," she said softly. Colt chuckled. "Things don't get done by themselves out here." Emma looked down at her hands. "Do you ever feel lonely?" Colt didn't answer right away. He let the question rest between them, giving it the respect it deserved. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but it's a peaceful kind of lonely. And lately," he added gently, "it doesn't feel so lonely anymore." Emma's breath caught. She didn't know how to respond, so she just nodded. But inside, something warm unfurled deep in her chest. As the days passed, Emma began to open up. Not in dramatic ways, she didn't suddenly share her whole past or reveal every fear, but in small, meaningful moments. She laughed more easily. She asked Colt questions about his childhood, his favorite food, how he learned to ride horses. She even told him about the books she loved to read, the songs she liked, the dreams she once had but thought she wasn't allowed to keep. Colt treasured every piece of her she chose to share. One morning, Colt found Emma standing near the old cottonwood tree behind the barn. She was looking up at its wide branches, her expression thoughtful. When she noticed him, she smiled shyly. "This tree feels peaceful," she said. "It's my favorite place on the whole property," Colt replied. "My parents planted it when they first built the ranch house." Emma brushed her fingers along the rough bark. "It feels like it has a lot of memories." "It does," Colt said softly. Then, taking a slow breath, he added, "It's also where I always imagined I'd, start my next chapter. With someone who wanted to share this life with me." Emma's heart skipped. She looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes, unsure whether she understood his meaning. Colt noticed her worry and stepped closer, but not too close. "You don't have to say anything," he said gently. "I just wanted you to know that being here with you feels right. I'm not asking for anything more than your comfort and your trust." Emma felt her eyes grow warm, not with fear but with emotion she couldn't quite name. "Colt, I've never had someone be so patient with me." "Take all the time you need," he replied. And she did. Over the next few weeks, Emma settled into ranch life more deeply. She felt herself healing in ways she hadn't expected. She slept better. She woke up with purpose. She talked more freely with Colt. She no longer flinched when someone called her name. She even began humming quietly while brushing Daisy's coat. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Emma stood in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup. Colt had been fixing a broken fence post all afternoon, and he walked inside, tired but smiling when he smelled the food. "Did you make that?" he asked. Emma nodded shyly. "I wanted to. You've been working hard." He looked at her as if she had handed him the world. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft. They ate together in the small dining area, the warm light from the lamp making the moment feel gentle and safe. For the first time, Emma felt like she belonged somewhere, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. A few weeks later, something important changed inside her. She woke up one morning and realized she hadn't felt afraid in days. She hadn't doubted every step she took. She hadn't apologized for existing. Instead, she had woken with a smile, knowing she was building something real. That afternoon, she found Colt near the barn, repairing a gate. She stood quietly for a moment before speaking. "Colt?" He looked up, wiped sweat from his forehead, and smiled. "Hey, Emma." She swallowed, her heart beating fast but steady. "I want to stay," she said. Colt blinked, surprised not because he doubted her feelings, but because he knew how much courage it took for her to say those words. He stood slowly and stepped closer, giving her space to pull back if she needed to. She didn't. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. Emma nodded. "I'm sure. I want a future here. With you. If you still want me to." Colt's smile grew warm and full of emotion. "Emma," he said gently, "I've wanted that since the day you said hello." They didn't rush anything. They talked to the shelter, filled out paperwork, and made sure everything was official and safe. And then, one quiet afternoon under the cottonwood tree, they exchanged simple vows. No crowd, no noise, just the two of them. The shelter staff who had supported Emma, and the soft breeze rustling the leaves above. Emma wore a simple dress. Colt wore his best shirt. They held hands, and when the moment came, Emma looked into Colt's eyes with a confidence she had never known. "I choose you," she said softly. "I choose you too," Colt replied. When it was done, Emma leaned her head against his chest. She felt safe, warm, and at peace. She had come so far from the scared woman who thought she wasn't the pretty one. She had found a place where she didn't have to be perfect, where she didn't have to be anything except herself, and that was more than enough. Her new life began right there, under the cottonwood tree, with the man who had seen her worth from the very first moment.